Good afternoon, Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League fans. We're into, well, officially the greatest time of the year when it comes to Manitoba Major Junior Hockey League hockey, and that is, of course, the start of the postseason, as we're proud to officially unveil our first round broadcast schedule in the Elite Eight, depending on how the series go through the first 3 games or so. We're going to decide on the matchups after that. But our goal, as mentioned yesterday, if you joined yesterday's edition of the podcast, tuned in, our goal is to bring as many podcast games to you as possible as G-Show Productions in conjunction with Prairie Sports Network. We're teaming up on this as 4 great series on the way for this first round. It should be a good one, and we can't wait to get into all of it. Well, myself getting into all of it today is, if you are new here to the channel, if this is your first time seeing us, welcome in. We try to produce as many podcast episodes as possible to do with the leagues we cover, and that includes, of course, the MMJHL. It's crazy we're already at this point in the season, MMJHL fans, where we're into the postseason. Felt like another season flew by, but yeah, really excited for this year. These playoffs, of course, the St. Boniface Riels chose their picture of them raising the trophy last year as the main picture for the promo for this episode to honor the defending champs, to pay respect to them as they go up against the Fort Garry Twins for yet another year in the playoffs. This is like part 3 between what's become, I guess, it's been more so one-sided in terms of who's come away with the victories. St. Boniface has ousted Fort Garry the past 2 seasons, and of course last year sweeping them. Last year's finalists in the Transcona Railer Express. Could this be the year for them as they finish with their best season in MMJHL history since returning as the Railer Express? And yeah, just so many other possibilities that could potentially happen. You know, St. James, the hottest team heading into the playoffs, can they go through a gauntlet, yeah, man, already forgetting English here on this Thursday afternoon. But yeah, are they able to go through what should be a tough road and come home with championship, being able to get back to a place where they went 3 years straight of winning championships up until last year? You know, is this the year for Stonewall to get back? It's their 25th year anniversary, and they got a loaded squad this season. River East is back in the playoffs for the first time in a few years. They haven't made it since 2022-2023. And for Fort Garry, last year's Art Moog winners, as mentioned, getting the St. Boniface Riels, can they pull off what would be quite the upset if they are able to dethrone the defending champs in the first round? And then, well, a team that I haven't even mentioned yet in the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, can they find their best game, find another level to pull off what would be the biggest upset of the first round series, as they'll be taking on the Transcona Railer Express? As one last time, we'll take a look at the final standings. The St. Vital Junior Victorias missing the playoffs for the first time in quite a while. It's the second year in a row for Pembina Valley where they've finished last place in the league, but a lot more positives, as talked about yesterday in the season review episode. In terms of power rankings heading into the playoffs, this is how I see it. I put the Vixen last in our last edition of the MMJHL Power Rankings for this year, brought to you by Movement Fitness and Performance. And the reason for that, not a great record, the worst record actually in their last 10 games played, and of course missing the playoffs. I felt like, honestly, the Twisters had more positives to end off their season. I mean, this team was able to go out and beat the St. Boniface Riels, the Stonewall Jets. They clobbered them on the scoreboard 7-2. So yeah, Pembina Valley getting that respect of bumping up a spot, but I can't put them in the top 8 since these are playoff teams. Yeah, I have the Raiders the Railers number 1, just based off of the season they had. But I put St. James at number 2, even though they're 4th. fourth best record in the league. This team, the hottest team heading into the playoffs, a team with the most goals scored too, and a team that just kind of beat the brakes off of the Transcone Railer Express with a 6-1 victory in their final regular season matchup. So had to give acknowledgement to St. James is they've not only made a statement this season, but I feel like they could very well be among the championship contenders heading into the playoffs, and I'd say they are. For the St. Boniface Riels, their most recent matchup against the Stonewall Jets, they were able to beat them. St. Boniface finished the season quite consistently, one of the best records in their last 10 games. As for the Stonewall Jets, one spot below St. Boniface, but this team, make no mistake about it, for me, they're a top 4 team heading into the playoffs. At the very worst, fourth is where we have them. Charleswood, as well as River East, decided to place them and where their seedings are. Charleswood did have a big win against the Railers near the end of their season, finished with quite a bit of consistency and a winning streak heading into the postseason. Are they able to keep that up for the River East Royal Knights? Couldn't put them above the top 5 teams. They had better goals for, goals against differentials, and yeah, similar to how Charleswood finished in terms of their last 10, and yeah, decided to put the Knights in 6th because of that. And then for the Fort Garry Twins, a team that's looking to play spoiler come playoff time, but yeah, just can't justify putting them any higher than 7th just based off of their lack of goal scoring this season. Special teams wasn't the greatest, and yeah, for the Twins, gonna need great goaltending, I feel like, and their young guys to step up in the postseason if they want to make a run at it. And then for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club, the last team in, they get 8th spot because of that, and all the numbers kind of leaning towards them being in this 8th spot with their lack of goals for, a lot more goals against compared to some of the teams that are, or the teams that are above them in these rankings. In fact, the Raiders are the only playoff team to make it in that gave up over 200 goals this season. So that's my power rankings, our power rankings, I guess, G-Show Productions power rankings heading into the 2026 MMJHL Playoffs. Time to get into some MMJHL award predictions. Now, these are my award predictions based off of everything we've seen this season. Did make different predictions going into the year, and some of those have changed at this point. I know that one of them has stayed the same, but let's get into them. For me, with 83 points, the fact that St. James was, in the position they are, scoring way more goals, and, well, he had over 40 of them. Jaden Ward gets MVP for me. Led the league in points, 10 more than Peyton Bateman, and a few more, even more in terms of that gap between him and Gavin Halad, who finished top 3 in points. But yeah, for Jaden Ward, from me, MVP award just simply because of how much he really meant to this St. James Junior Canucks team this season, how the offense really ran through Jaden Ward this year. And this was his first season of MMJHL hockey too, which made it all that more impressive. But yeah, led the league in points as well as in goals this season. And for me, just given that St. James, the hottest team heading into the playoffs with a 5-game win streak, the fact that they were able to put up the amount of goals that they did this season, a .213, and the only goal scorer they had with over 30 and even over 40 goals was Jaden Ward this season. So for me, he gets MVP just because of how valuable he was to St. James's offensive attack and their overall success this year. Top defenseman, I gave it to Caden Bruchansky. Not only has Caden been so solid in his own zone this year, but also when you take a look at the points, I just want to confirm this. Because, yeah, like I said yesterday, the MMJHL, from what I've been able to find, they don't have their season stats posted anymore. So you ought to bear with me here as I take a look at the points leaders. Just to confirm that, of course, Caden finished with the most points defensively. Declan Whiteman on Elite Prospects is listed as a defenseman, but they moved him up to forward this year. And he has been playing forward consistently throughout these past few seasons for Transcona. But yeah, just in terms of defenseman scoring, Caden Bruchansky had the most, a point more compared to his production versus Cole Warsaba, rookie defenseman for the St. James Junior Canucks. And yeah, for me, Caden Bruchansky led all defensemen in points, was the most valuable defenseman, I'd say, on who was the best defensive team by the numbers this season in terms of goals against. And their shots against were among the lowest in the league. And Caden Bruchansky, just in terms of his play in the D zone and how he's able to drive offense from the back end, the production and all of that, that's why for me he gets top defenseman this year. Top goaltender award goes to Sage Delarone. Sage was top in wins this season, the only goaltender to get over 20 wins, and of course, for Transcona, talked about how good of a defensive team they were this season. Well, a huge part of why their goals against was so low was because of the play of Sage. He had save percentage that was just a bit higher than 930. And yeah, one of the top save percentages in the league this season. Also had 4 shutouts too. So Sage did it all. He stole games this season for Transcona, but most times he wasn't asked to. But when things did break down, he was up to the task more times than not in coming away with those big stops to help lead his team to victory. So for me, top goalie of the year goes to Sage Delarone. Rookie of the year, already touched on Jaden Ward. In terms of the MVP award, honestly, dark horse pick would be Owen LaRocque, just because of how much he meant to St. Boniface this year and how they struggled to put up wins without him in the lineup when he missed due to injury. But yeah, Jaden Ward, more durability in his game this season, being able to put up the 83 points. For me, he's MVP and Rookie of the Year as well, since this is his first year. I feel like that would only make sense to give it to him too, but maybe the league sees it differently. As for Coach of the Year, goes to Pat Power, in my opinion, just because of how Stonewall was able to improve their record for yet another season, and big time improving their record this year. This is a team that only got to 18 wins last season. They got to 27 wins this past season in 2025-2026, and they were ranked 3rd place in the league. And not only that, but their goals for per game were 3rd in the league, as well as a really good defensive team. Also, limiting more shots against compared to last year on average. And it's just this team taking another step and them buying into Pat Power's systems, his philosophy, all of that. And I feel like just because of the big jump they took from 7th to 3rd, improving to over 20 wins this year, close to 30, as they had 27. They only had 18 last year, and given that they're a championship contender this year, going to be a tough team to beat in the playoffs, would give Pat Power Coach of the Year, given all of that context. But hey, maybe it'll go to Derek Gagnon, being able to guide the Railer Express to their first Art Moog trophy since they've returned as a franchise into this league. Paul Castas could be deserving as well, just because of how many injuries his team went through this season, and they're still able to come away with 30-plus wins. Only 2 teams were able to do that this year, Transcona as well as St. Boniface. Or maybe it even goes to, St. James's coaching staff, Coach Dick and co, since St. James took not as big of a jump compared to Stonewall, but did take a big jump nonetheless up to 4th place. And of course, improved their goals for, limited their goals against, lowered those compared to last year. But yeah, for me, Pat Power, I chose him as coach of the year heading into the year just because I felt like Stonewall would take another big jump. And for me, I think he should be recognized for their success as much as their players, that staff there in Stonewall doing a great job this season as the Huntford the Jack, Jack McKenzie, which is the name of the championship trophy. It starts tonight in the MMJHL, as this is the full schedule. It starts off with the defending champion St. Boniface Riels taking on the Fort Garry Twins in Game 1 of their best-of-7 series. And yeah, these are all the games that are to be played. There is more games on the schedule, but those are if necessary, right? Because, you never know what could happen. Certain teams could sweep. Series could go a lot shorter compared to 5, 6, even 7 games. So that's why we're showing you the schedule like this right now, the first 4 games from each series. Be sure to check out mmjhl.ca for the full postseason schedule. Once we come back, I'm going to break down every first round series, and I'm also going to take you through my playoff predictions for how I see this year's MMJHL postseason playing out. That's coming up next on the MMJHL podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in on this Thursday afternoon ahead of the opening night of the 2026 MMJHL postseason. We are going to send it to a commercial break and then be back shortly after.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
Welcome back into the MMJHL Podcast 2026 Playoff Preview. Let's continue on here. We're talking about the hunt for the Jack, right? And, well, taking a look at this postseason bracket. 4 really good matchups on tap. I do see one of those being a sweep, and I'll get into that in just a moment. But yeah, I'm going to reveal my bracket picks as this goes along. Our coverage, by the way, starts tomorrow in St. James as well as in Stonewall. We'll have both of those Game 1 Sunday, 2 Game 2s for you, and then Tuesday we'll have 2 Game 3s, as just realizing female hockey schedule that I got sent has an error in the date, as they had it starting on the 20th. That's what 19th, sorry, and yeah, that would be the 18th would be the Wednesday coming up next week. Yeah, so I'm getting a bit confused myself now, but in terms of this year's postseason matchups, the Raiders, they're into another 8 versus 1 matchup, 1 versus 8 matchup. As we take a look at these two teams side by side, going to be really tough for the Raiders Junior Hockey Club. They have beaten the Railer Express before this season. That was their first meeting of the year, but since then, Transcona owned the season series. There was only 1 game out of their 4 wins that went into overtime, which means Raiders' record should be 1-3-1 against Transcona this year. That's how it should read. But yeah, I mean, unless Raiders, they can elevate their game, which I talked about yesterday, I feel like they have the pieces to potentially do that. They just haven't really shown that throughout the course of the season, that they're capable to hang with a top end team throughout the course of 60 minutes. And for me, like, Owen Savoy needs to be the X factor. He needs to steal this series for the Raiders. Of course, they need their big time players to come out in front of them and be great, but yeah, just the way Transcona is able to control play, dictate the pace, how lethal they are on the power play, how sneaky their penalty kill is, and you look at the Raiders' numbers and just how the season series has gone for me, it's an easy pick for a sweep here. Maybe the Raiders do steal one game. Heck, maybe the Raiders pull off one of the greatest upsets in MMJHL history. But for me, I just feel like Transcona is going to be too much for them. I think in that first round series for Transcona, if there's any X factor, it'd be the captain Nolan Vandenbush, just because of how he can attack you in all phases of the game, 5-on-5. You know, is the conductor on the power play for his squad. One of the conductors, that is, maybe not the main one on his unit. So you can make the argument that's Berchansky, but yeah, probably the best penalty killer in the league too, just from what I've seen. So yeah, for me, the captain gets the X Factor title heading into round one for his Regular Express against the Raiders. But for a team that's so motivated to get back to the finals, I think that they make quick work of the Raiders in round one and make it through in a sweep. As for the St. Boniface Riels and the Fort Garry Twins, deja vu. It's their second quarterfinals matchup in the past 3 seasons. These teams met each other back in the semifinals last year, where Fort Garry was favored in that series, being the first place team in the MMJHL. St. Boniface was 4th ranked last year, of course. But in that series, St. Boniface wore down Fort Garry as that series went along, and while a key part of that was just how they were able to sustain such a high level in their defensive zone, and Owen Larocque being able to be the biggest X factor in that series, stealing the first 2 games. I take a look at both of these rosters this year. Fort Garry, as mentioned throughout this season and in yesterday's podcast, they just lost so much significant talent from a very experienced team last year. A younger team this year that I think they have a bright future, but it's just, this isn't the same Fort Garry Twins team. This isn't the same team that had juggernauts on the offensive side. They have a few 20-goal scorers, but overall they ranked about 8th in goals for per game this season. More so middle of the pack in terms of goals against. This team plays very disciplined, but when they do get their opportunities on the special teams, they're average on the PK as well as near the bottom of the league on the power play. They've also averaged getting outshot more so than outshooting teams per game. And I just take a look at them against the St. Boniface Riels, who have a lot of experience from last year's championship team, still a lot of key pieces in play, and how this team is able to defend and how important that is come postseason time, how lethal their special teams can be. Looking based off of last year, how they were able to capitalize at a high level off being opportunistic. I just see very much of the same things playing out, just because of how Fort Garry struggled to score against them in that series last year and come in with significantly less offensive talent experience all around. I think that the X factor for Fort Garry is going to have to be Alex Pauls. He's going to have to find a way to outplay Owen Larocque consistently, but I think Owen Larocque is St. Boniface's biggest X factor, and when you're able to have a goaltender of that stature, a big-time goaltender who is arguably your MVP this season, I say he would. And given that I don't think we've exactly seen the best from St. Boniface's top-end players this year, even though many of them put up career years, I just think that they're going to elevate at the right time, and I think that Fort Garry may take one game, being able to beat St. Boniface for the first time this year. I think that they've been playing a lot better and have played St. Boniface a lot closer as the season's gone along, but I'm taking the experience from last year's run, the pieces they have in place this year, and I just think that St. Boniface is going to be too much for Fort Garry to handle. And I personally got this series going 5 games. Bentley Brant, though, would disagree with my assessment. We'll get into that much later in this podcast, but River East and Stonewall. River East back into the playoffs for the first time since 2022-2023. Stonewall making their second straight appearance back for the first time in this decade. Um, yeah, Stonewall this season, look, not only do they have elite top line talent, but this team is very deep overall. They got 3 lines that can score. This is a team that defends very well, a team with a lot of speed and one of the best goaltenders in the league in Spencer Hunnam. But this River East Royal Knights team has, I think, surprised teams all season long, and this is a team that can score. They got high-end offensive talent themselves, not maybe quite at the level compared to Stonewall, but by the numbers, it's close, right? I do think, though, the difference in this series could be on the special team side of things, as well as just the speed that Stonewall plays with, their consistency. Can River East match that throughout? I'm not so sure that they can throughout this series, but I think that River East, if they're able to get into these games where they're more so barn burners, I think that probably gives them their best chance to move forward in this series against Stonewall. But I feel like throughout this series, Stonewall, I think they're going to just take over a bit more, I think, just with their talent. I also do think that their X factor could be a guy like Cohen Chung, who is more so in the middle of the lineup, and if River East starts to key in on that top line, I think that, and limit them a bit, I think that a player like Cohen Chung could be an instrumental part to Stonewall's success in this series. For River East, it's simple. They need Kyle Bielman to be the all-star he was this season, and they need him to deliver a series of his life. I think that for River East to truly win this series, as good as their offensive pieces are, as physical as this group plays, and as much as they've surprised us this season, they're going to need Kyle Bielman to step up. I think that the likelihood of Stonewall averaging more shots throughout this series is probably pretty likely. And yeah, if River East can hang in the defensive zone and find a way to execute on their opportunities at a high level, right, even though they may be a bit more limited compared to going up against other teams, I think that is one of the pathways of making it through to the next round. But yeah, for me, I think that Stonewall just overall has too much for River East to handle in this series. I like their goaltending and their defensive play a lot more than River East. The consistency of it this season, I could see this game or this series going to 6 games. Maybe we even see 7 games. But I think in 6 games, Stonewall advances against River East to put them out in the first round. Now, this series, man, this could be the best series of the first round. Charleswood Hawks and St. James Junior Canucks, 2 rivals, 2 teams that are going into this postseason with the hottest hands. A 5-game winning streak for St. James, a 4-game winning streak for Charleswood. Looking at the numbers, Charleswood, middle of the pack in goals for, goals against. Also the least penalized team in the league, with the best power play. Going to St. James, Charleswood has a top 2 power plays. So, yeah, I mean, close in the season series, St. James was 3-2. Charleswood took the first 2 matchups of the season. If Charleswood is able to lock in defensively and Keegan Gordon comes to play, and they're able to get St. James frustrated, getting them into the penalty box, and their power play is able to come through and they're able to step up on the penalty kill, I do think they have a chance to take the St. James Junior Canucks. But I think the St. James Junior Canucks, they've been on a mission to prove a lot of people wrong this year in a mission to try to get back to the Final Four. Last season, they went out in 6 games to Transcona, in which was a very hard-fought physical series. And yeah, I guess I just look at St. James, even though they're the most penalized team left in play, as St. Vital took the most penalties in the league this year. But even with them maybe being a bit undisciplined, St. James plays such a physical game. They play with so much pace, so much speed, and it's not only Jaden Ward you have to take into account, right? When looking at this team, it's players on the front end like. So I just want to once again try to find the best way to look at the rosters here. Um, but yeah, it's not only Jaden Ward you have to factor in, but it's players like Tristan Arneson, you know, Nicholas Cullen, Caden Buffalo, or sorry, Cole Robertson is who I meant to say. Adrian McIntosh, Aiden Werfel, and then on the back end, they have one of the most potent blue lines in the league, led by Cole Warsaba, and then I think St. James goaltending has also been pretty good this year too, and they've added a bit more depth to that position by adding in Riley Brown. I just think St. James probably takes over this series with their physicality, with their speed, and their skill. I think that Charleswood can, when they're on their A game, they can defend well, but we've seen too many times this season for Charleswood where they've had lapses in coverage or puck management hasn't been exactly the best. And this team, even though they were middle of the pack in goals for, this team that scored way less this season compared to last year. They don't have the same type of overall depth as they had last year, even though Tyson Sperber, Elliot Lewis, they've been fantastic, right? 2 top 10 goal scorers, but I just don't think that Charleswood has enough in their arsenal. I think their pathway to winning this series is, of course, success on special teams, but most notably, Keegan Gordon has to steal this series, as many goaltenders who are bottom seeds may have to. But yeah, a really tough draw for Charleswood heading into this round. For me, X factor for St. James, easy to pick. It's Jaden Ward, our choice for the MVP. I think even if Charleswood finds ways to shut Jaden Ward down or limit him. I just think St. James has too much around him to make them pay. They're playing with so much speed this season. They play with so much pace. And I just feel like their type of style of play, they're going to wear out this Charleswood Hawks team as this series goes along. And for me, St. James makes it in to the next round. As all of a sudden my voice is starting to go. As we'll show you, this will be my final 4 and how the series play out. Yeah, I got a sweep for Transcona, 6 games for St. James to make it through. St. Boniface in 5 games, and Stonewall in 6. I'm going to throw it to another commercial really quickly here before we start. All of a sudden, my voice is out of whack. We'll be back right away.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry Upper Deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, The Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
All right, that feels a bit better. Welcome back to this edition of the MMJHL podcast as we keep rolling here for our 2026 playoff preview. By the way, games for the first round, they are going to be set to $10, $3 up from our regular season since this is the playoffs. Per round, we haven't decided on the prices for the Final Four as well as the finals yet. We're just kind of going to take it round by round. I think that's the best way to approach it. Also, we're going to bring you probably more games than these six. It depends on how long these rounds last. But yeah, we're kind of up in the air right now in terms of what we'll be doing for next Friday, which is on the 20th, just because of, you know, depends on a bunch of different things, but we want to try to give you the best bang for your buck with the most entertaining matchups, and some matchups may bring more significance depending on if, the series could be 2-1 heading in compared to the 3-0. So yeah, could affect things, but we will keep you posted, of course. Be sure to check out all the content on our Uscreen services. We're updating it right now to make it as easy as possible for you to purchase games. And yeah, as well as you can also purchase games directly through the MMJHL's website by hitting that TV screen. There's also text that says watch game, which will take you directly to the live broadcast. Excited for this postseason and excited to see how it plays out, as these are my picks so far for the 2026 MMJHL playoff bracket. We're going to show you Bentley Brants in just a little bit here. But yeah, I got all top seeds moving forward into the next round. No upsets. Sometimes I want to try to, pick some upsets in there, but this year I've decided to go with my gut, and my gut tells me that, personally, I think that all top seeds are going to make it through, but who knows until we actually play the games, right? Transcona and St. James. We'll start off with that series as, man, what a Final Four this could be. Honestly, this could be a finals matchup in a different world, but maybe it will be if, those teams don't meet in the Final Four and there is an upset. But these two teams battled all season long. You know, both of the highest scoring teams in the MMJHL. Both are top four defensively. Both, have special teams that are at worst, fourth. Both teams play with so much pace. Both teams, I believe, average the most shots on goal per game this season. And yeah, I think the main difference between these two teams is that Transcona is more sound defensively, and for me, I feel like that's going to play a huge factor in this series in Transcona moving through, in my personal opinion. These are, among two of the deepest teams in the MMJHL, two teams that play with so much physicality. Both of them were amongst the most penalized teams in the league this season. These are two teams that don't like each other very much, right? They sort of have a hatred for each other. You see it on the ice. And yeah, I mean, just looking back at last year, both of these teams beat each other up in that first round. A year before that, they faced off in the Elite Eight, where that was another physical series. So it's going to be physical. It's going to be must-see TV. I can't wait for it. But yeah, I just feel like, with who I feel like is the top goaltender in the league this season in Sage Delarone, the decor, the experience that Transcona has, I think that it's pretty much a wash offensively. maybe Transcona has a bit more depth scoring throughout and isn't as reliant on their top goal scorer compared to St. James. Not that St. James doesn't have other guys that can put the puck in the net compared to Jaden Ward. I've been praising their depth throughout this episode and really as the season's been going along, but I just think it's a touch above for the Transcona Railer Express compared to St. James. But I think that St. James is going to push Transcona to their brink. I also think for Transcona, trying to make it to the final to have this type of series is kind of a blessing in disguise, right? Because you don't really want to go through a type of series where you have to go through 7 games. Ideally you want to make it through as least games as possible, but I do think that for Transcona, if they are able to get through this, which I do think they will, I think it'll benefit whether it's them or St. James heading into the playoffs, just given that this is going to be, I think you could argue it could be a finals matchup in a different universe, but yeah, for me, I think that the winner of this series is going to benefit from the type of competition, right, that they go through and what's going to be an absolute battle. But yeah, I'm leading Transcona here in 7 games just simply because of I think they're a bit more complete on paper compared to the St. James Junior Canucks. But like I said, I think that St. James is going to push them and give Transcona an all-time great battle. So yeah, I got them moving through. Who will Transcona face off against, in my opinion? Will it be a rematch of last year's finals with a chance for the Railers to get revenge, or will it be a different team that comes through in the Stonewall Jets? Man, this is another series that I had a lot of trouble picking. This was probably the hardest series to pick in the postseason because you take a look at both of these teams. Stonewall has taken that next step in their game, and for a lot of their top end players on this team, this is the last run, right? Like, they do have quite a few players that are going to be aging out that are 04s. So yeah, I just want to confirm it here. But Stonewall, they've been building for the past 2 seasons. They've kind of been on a similar trajectory compared to teams like the St. Boniface Riels, right? Who, en route to winning their first championship in a decade. They had to go through the struggles leading up to that. 2 seasons before they won the championship, they were the 8th place team, and then the season before they won it, they progressed to 3rd. And as for Stonewall, well, they're very much on that same type of track, right? And a team that, just trying to find their roster, but it's a team that loses Peyton Bateman after this season, Cohen Chung, Alex Kasarowski, their captain, and Carson King, as well as defensively Austin Larenko, and Brody Stoven. So yeah, there's a lot on the line for this team. They've been, like I said, building towards trying to get to this spot, and they'd love nothing more than to knock off this defending champion St. Boniface Riels team, which both of these teams throughout the season, it was close in the season series. I believe St. Boniface just won it by a score of 3-2. On paper, like, even though St. Boniface, they got to more wins this season and finished higher in the standings, they did score less goals for, and on paper they do have less depth compared to last year, in terms of productions heading into this postseason compared to a team like Stonewall, which has about 8 different goal scorers with over 10 this season. A deep team, a fast team, and a team that you could say is built to beat a team like the St. Boniface Riels team, right? A team that relies so much on their defensive game. Really all stems from the defensive side of the puck and onwards, right, for St. B. And then you take a look at the goaltending comparison for these two sides. Like, Owen LaRocque, best save percentage in the league. Spencer Hunnam, and tied the single-season shutout record with 6 this year. He's very capable of stealing games and has even shut out the St. Boniface Riels team this season. But for me, uh, when I take a look at the St. Boniface Riels and what they were able to do last year and how they were able to lock in defensively, and the fact that the playoff MVP is still there in Owen LaRocque and had himself career high numbers this year in terms of save percentage throughout the regular season, how valuable he was to St. Boniface. And St. B, if he stayed in the lineup and didn't get injured this year, there was a stretch in January where they were on like a 3-4 game losing streak and he wasn't in the lineup. So I think him coming back into the mix changes things a lot for St. Boniface. And like I mentioned, they may not have the same type of depth overall compared to last year, but they still made moves at the deadline to help supply this team with guys like Connor Mitchell, as well as Nolan Anderson, Brzezinski, Sukit, Cole Davis. They've all had career years. Evan Lambert has seen an uptick in goal scoring, and I just feel like we haven't quite seen the best of the St. Boniface Riels team yet this season. When I take a look at them matching up against Stonewall, I think the two teams match up very well together. I think this is going to be a very close, tight series, and I think the closer and tighter the games are, I think that favors a team like St. Boniface, just given how this team, I think that Owen LaRocque has a chance to get back into his groove, and we saw what they were able to do against Fort Garry last year, and I think you can make an argument that overall Stonewall may be a deeper team compared to Fort Garry. I think that St. Boniface will find a way in this series to get it done in the defensive zone. And another thing that I think is an advantage for St. Boniface is just their power play, their penalty kill. It's been more consistent compared to a team like Stonewall. And yeah, I just feel like the fact that we haven't seen the best of this Riels team yet this season, I think that they elevate their game come playoff time. We saw that better than anyone last year, and I think that this is going to be a really close series where Stonewall is going to push the defending champs to their brink. But yeah, I think that St. Boniface's best players are going to come out to play. I think they will execute well enough in the defensive zone. And Owen LaRocque, I think he outplays Spencer Hunnam in this series. That's no offense to Spencer Hunnam, but just seeing what LaRocque did last year, seeing that St. Boniface is on a mission again to try to get back to that promised land, to try to repeat. I think for that reason, I slightly lean with the St. Boniface Riels in this year's final series, where, yeah, I mean, both of these teams may be a bit worn out heading into the finals, but man, what a battle that this could be. The rematch for the Railer Express, they've been waiting a long time, I think, to all season long, really, to try to get back to this moment. They've been building towards that, where they would love nothing more than to try to bring home their first championship in franchise history since returning to the league over the defending champs, the team that broke their hearts last season. Last year in the finals, all of the first 4 games were really close between these two teams. It came down to the bounces, it came down to execution, and St. Boniface was just on a whole nother tier. They were on such a heater last season and just felt like they couldn't be beat right by the end of it. But I think that this season, Transcona, with the experience of going through last year, I said it heading into this year that when I was making my regular season standings predictions, that I leaned towards the Railers getting first over the St. Boniface Riels, just because I feel like the returning top end talent they had coming back compared to St. Boniface truly will matter, and I think that it will matter the most of this series in terms of, when these teams match up against each other. I think that Transcona will just have too much for St. Boniface to handle in the end. I feel like for Transcona this season too, just given that they're the highest scoring team in the league, St. Boniface, as much as I think that they're going to raise their game come playoff time, I think that running into a team like the Transcone Railer Express, a team that can defend so well and has found the recipe to limit St. Boniface and what they like to do, kind of off their speed, I think that that's all going to factor into this series, and I just think that this will be a series that Owen LaRock won't be quite able to steal. I think that this series is going to be close, back and forth for a lot of the time, but I think there's going to come a point where the Transcone Railer Express, their depth, their high-end talent, and their defensive play are going to trump the St. Boniface Riel squad this season. I think the run, the hopes to repeat are going to die for the Riels, and for me, I think it's going to go 5 games this year on the other side for the Transcone Railer Express. I do think making it through in 7 games for them against St. James, it's going to wake them up. It's going to give them a bit of a scare, and I think that Transcona locks in and puts on an unreal performance in the finals and comes away with this year's Jack McKenzie Trophy for the first time, something that has eluded this Railer Express team. They've had teams in the past that have looked like contenders. They've fallen short. I feel like this year is the year where they finally put it all together. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments about how you feel this playoffs is going to go, who you got going to the finals, who you have winning, what's your big upsets. I didn't really pick any big upsets at all. Didn't pick any upsets, really. I think I have the top seeds winning every series, which means I'm probably going to be wrong, most likely, as anything can happen in the postseason, and well, we kind of saw that last year, right? Like, just because you have regular season success and dominate doesn't mean it's going to translate into the postseason, and man, honestly, Final Four wise, I know I talked about how great it was going to be last year. Final Four was a bit disappointing last year. I think with it being a sweep, of course, for St. B over Fort Garry and 5 games for Transcona, thought it was going to be a bit longer. I am hoping that both Final Four series this year, no matter who it is, go at least 6 games. 2 7-game Final Four series would be unbelievable. But man, what a playoff season this is going to be, MMJHL fans. Playoff MVP, I guess I'll get my thoughts on that. We're going to go with Caden Bruchansky. I think Caden Bruchansky comes away with playoff MVP. If Transcona wins it all, I know I picked Nolan Vandenbush as an X Factor. I could also see him being playoff MVP. That was more so for the first round matches, but I think throughout this postseason as it goes along, Caden Bruchansky is going to prove why I believe he's the best defenseman in the league at this point in the season. I think he's going to be a valuable piece, a very valuable piece, maybe the most instrumental piece outside of Delarone, Vandenbush, maybe a few other forwards for Transcona to go on the run that they're setting their sights on going on. So yeah, those are my playoff predictions. We're going to come back next, and I'm going to wrap up this show by showing you Bentley Brandt's playoff picks, and I'm going to give my quick thoughts on that, and then we are going to send you off for this Thursday afternoon. Thank you so much for tuning in if you are. This is the MMJHL podcast, and we'll be right back right away.
Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia offers the widest selection of sports cards and signed memorabilia in the city. For dedicated casual and new collectors, Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia has everything a collector could ask for. Everything we sell is stored with care, and with help from our knowledgeable team, we'll help you find exactly what you're looking for. We carry upper deck hockey card brands like Series 1 and 2, the Cup, Ultimate, SPA, and plenty more. So what are you waiting for? Come down to Can Central Sports Cards and Memorabilia, Winnipeg's premier sports cards and memorabilia store.
Welcome back in, everybody, to the MMJHL podcast. Man, what a picture this is. Will the St. Boniface Riels do it again? This is a picture from their championship game last year in Game 5 when they won in East End in Transcona's home rink. They could very well be heading back to play Transcona in the finals this year if everything, well, goes to plan for both top seeds. Of course, I've given my bracket predictions, how I feel this postseason is going to play out. And yeah, leave your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. By the way, thanks to everyone that's tuning in. I see that there's, you know, a few people watching this episode right now, so we really do appreciate your support. Kind of miffed that, I am really excited for tonight's C Division final, but unfortunately, because of that, we aren't able to broadcast St. Boniface and Fort Garry. But don't worry, St. B and Fort Garry fans, we're going to have Game 2 of your series on Sunday evening at Century Arena. We start off tomorrow at Abe McDonald Arena and the Veterans Memorial Sports Complex in Stonewall, as River East making their return into the playoffs for the first time since 2022-2023. Looking to continue to prove us wrong, as, hey, we had them missing the playoffs this year, but they ended up finishing sixth. We're going against them in our predictions. I got Stonewall winning in 6 games, but hey, maybe River East is able to shock us and shock the MMJHL world again. What a group that was this season, and of course continues to be. And yeah, they're hoping that they can play spoiler come playoff time against the 3 seed in their series starting tomorrow. But you want to see Bentley Brandt's picks? Well, here they are. He's also got Transcona in the finals like me, but there's a few things different about this bracket. We were only in agreement on 3 out of 4 teams making it through. He's got the Twins beating the Riels in 6 games. Personally, I just don't see it, but Bentley feels like the Riels may be lacking something compared to last year, and statistically, that is kind of true. They are lacking offense compared to last year. They finished 6th in goals for compared to 4th last year, and they did see a drop. But yeah, I think that St. Boniface finds their game in the first round in these playoffs, and I think they're in for another strong run. Stonewall winning the championship and making it to the final, I do quite like that pick. I think that Stonewall, it could go either way between them and St. Boniface. I just like a few factors for St. Boniface a bit better compared to Stonewall, even though they are a deeper team on paper. Compared to, St. Boniface this season by the statistics, more goals for, but of course St. Boniface second best defensive team in the league by a lot of metrics this year, and yeah, but if Stonewall's able to find their game, their top level, they've been a really hard team to beat this season, and it would be pretty awesome for them to go through and make it to the championship, as this is a group that I believe it's a decade since they've won the championship. I just want to double check this because it gets a bit murky in terms of my knowledge and who exactly won in what year in the mid-2010s, but for Stonewall, their only championship was a decade ago, so yeah, it could be similar to St. Boniface last year, right, who weren't a top 2 seed, we're a 4th seed. Stonewall, a 3rd seed. It's one of their best finishes in a while. They definitely do have the game, I think, to go on this type of run. And if everything comes together for them, I definitely do think if it is them and the Railers, they give the Railers quite a battle in the finals. And I didn't exactly get Bentley's insight and explanation exactly for why he picked it this way, but just looking at it, it looks like, for Stonewall, their road a bit tougher compared to, well, I'd say a lot tougher compared to Transcona's, as St. James would be a really hard team to beat, but yeah, going off of that, they're, going through that tougher road compared to the Railers heading into the finals, and then they end up hoisting the championship. That would be a fantastic series to see the top duo in the league, and Gavin Halot and Peyton Bateman and the rest of Stonewall going up against the Transcona Railer Express, as Bentley is rolling with St. not Saint, but the Stonewall Jets to win. I'm rolling with the Transcone Railer Express to win it all in this year's MMJHL Playoffs, as the hunt for Jack McKenzie starts tonight in the MMJHL. So there we go. There's our graphic. By the way, this is the full schedule for the first 4 games for all 8 teams. Rest of the schedule is on the MMJHL's website on for, well, 2 games tomorrow and then 2 games Sunday as we'll be broadcasting. And then we'll have 2 games for you on Tuesday, as well as we'll be in Stonewall as well as in St. James on that night. And yeah, I just can't wait for it to start. It all starts tonight in the MMJHL, as, well, one of these 8 teams will come away with the championship this season. Will it be St. Boniface repeating? Will it be Transcona winning like I've predicted? Will it be Stonewall bringing home their second championship first in a decade? Or St. James, Charleswood, River East, Fort Garry, and or the Raiders have something to say about it? Well, I can't wait to find out. We hope that you tune in during this playoff season if you're unable to make it down to the rink in terms of the games that we're doing. Our first 5 games are available on Uscreen. I still got to add in Stonewall and River East's second game that we're going to be broadcasting in their game 3. But yeah, I'm going to get to doing that. I also got to prepare for tonight's C Division Finals. That starts at 5 p.m. It's Lorette taking on West Kildonan. That should be a lot of fun, and yeah, just the start to what's going to be a great weekend of playoff hockey, everybody. We can't wait to see you tuning in if you do. And as for this podcast, we can't wait to be back next week to recap what's gone down in the first few games of the MMJHL. Also hoping to have maybe a few guests on next week's episode too. But that is all up in the air for now. Until next time, everybody. This has been the end of this edition of the MMJHL podcast, the 2026 playoff preview. Happy hunting, MMJHL teams, the 8 teams that are into the postseason, and happy watching as well, MMJHL fans. I'm as excited as you are, I'm sure, to be able to take in all this great action this postseason. Take care, everybody.